And I think we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're going live, um, mainly because I'm kind of bored and I don't have any videos for you, anything new, for the most part. Last couple days, um, like today and yesterday, it was pretty cold out, and there's just not a lot of interesting stuff going on. Right now, we're working on possibly picking up some ground for the year. Um, we're kind of just all over the board, crunching our numbers, trying to figure out what we can pay and what we're going to put there and stuff like that, and also how much land we could take on um, and want to take on, I guess. Um, as far as the goats, they're doing pretty good. I am bottle feeding uh, the one the one triplet I couldn't get her to take. I am bottle feeding her now. Um, but it is what it is. Doing it 4 times a day. Getting up at 5:30 in the morning and bottle feeding. Uh, and I'm usually going back to bed. Uh, what's up, country boy logging? How are you doing tonight? So yeah, I guess if anybody is watching while I'm doing this, if you have any questions, throw them up. I'm just doing this because kind of I got nothing better to do. Um, but yeah, as I was saying, it's uh, it's been kind of cold. Not a lot going on. We're basically doing the bare minimum. Yesterday we hauled some wood. My grandparents had a tree fall down this last summer. We hauled that over by my uncle's place. Um, I doesn't really pay for me to film that. Um, so one thing that so we're working on possibly picking up some land, figuring out what we can pay and all that. Um, the one thing that kind of came to mind that's kind of a big topic and a lot of people ask it. Um, typically, I see it on other people's live streams, bigger channels. They'll get a kid on there that wants advice for starting a farm or starting to farm. And typically, the guy doesn't, at first, it's hard for him to come up with an answer. Um, and it's a very hard topic to it's very hard to explain to someone how to do that. Um, for one thing, land is hard to get, nothing's cheap, and there's not a lot of money in anything. Um, so it kind of depends on your situation. A lot of people have grandparents with a farm or a relative of some sort. Um, typically, the younger farmers have an in. It's either such like my parents have the farm, so you know, hopefully, if everything doesn't go to hell, I will take over the farm. And because my parents own the farm and bought the farm from um, my grandparents, that's just we're able to, you know, we're able to do it. Um, typically, farmland in this area is going for anywhere from seven. I'm going to say $7,000 to $12,000 an acre. Um, and with the input cost and um, net profits, that's pretty steep. Um, and land rent is going anywhere from let's say 150 to, I'm hearing numbers over 300 now, that we're looking at. Obviously, we're not looking at anymore, because it's over that 300 mark. Um, but you gotta know what you're doing. You gotta get your pencil out, your pencil and your notepad, and you gotta figure out uh, seed cost, rent, fertilizer, uh, spray, chemical. Um, if you don't have equipment, you're either gonna have to call up a custom guy. You're gonna have to rent. If you're really gutsy, you're gonna have to buy. Um, if you're a starting farmer and you're gonna, well, for one thing, you got to figure out um, what you want to do. Um, if you want to do crops, obviously, pretty much all you need is a piece of land that's, that fits your price budget. Um, but with the land comes equipment, which equipment is like crazy high expensive right now. Um, but I mean, you get away with a 40/20 and a little 10-foot disc. You could get through with that. And there's a lot of guys that do that. Um, but you got to be smart about it too. Whether you bought the property or you're renting the property, um, you got to make sure if you're renting that you're getting that rent paid, and you're keeping the landowner happy. One thing that I used equipment um, is definitely what you need to look into if you're starting out and you want to continue farming. Um, but keeping the landowner happy. And one thing that really irritates me, we picked up a field. It's about 60 acres. Um, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be running that. It's kind of surrounded by houses and house development and all that. Um, but coming into that property, there was a lot of plastic from like an egg bag, a lot on the property, and for us, we struggle to find land. We struggle like that. This piece that I'm talking about is about half an hour by car. It takes us almost an hour and a half with the tractor to get up there. Is it worth it? Well, for what we pay, it kind of works out, and just to have more land, that's as far as we had to go. We're surrounded by a bunch of huge farms. There's a couple big dairies. There's a few uh, big crop guys that, you know, one of them in particular, I think just wants to be the biggest and the best. And that's, well, he's still doing corn. He's still got corn standing in the field. And, well, that's just how it is. Um, so, anyways, we picked up this property and there was plastic and just junk all over this field. And to me, that's like, you're able to rent this property and you're going to treat it like that better than what you're doing, but yet you have the land. It's kind of a sore subject on my end. Um, but as I was saying, if you rent a property, make sure that the landlord's always happy. He always gets his rent paid on time. And you got to work it out if you're going to pay it all at once or pay it twice or three times a year or something like that. You got to work it out, but you got to keep them happy. You got to keep the property clean, and obviously just do everything that he wants you to do. You got to figure out, um, and talk to him from time to time. You gotta be, you gotta buddy up with him. um, so if you were, say, maybe just out of high school, or you're a couple of years out of high school, and um, you want to get into farming, you want to be a farmer. Um, it's gonna be a long haul, and kind of my advice: get a job, get a good job. Um, you know, construction pays really good, and you can usually work your way up. Factory job, stuff like that. That's gonna pay good, and you're probably gonna get the benefits as well. Health insurance, stuff like that. If you find the right job, and then keep your eyes open and find that property, um, with, let's say a barn, a house, a shed, and 40 acres. Um, Obviously, you're gonna have to pay for it because that's, you know, to a horse person or anybody that wants to raise horses or something like that, that's a gold mine. And we won't talk about them too much because that's the term horse people is kind of an inside joke around here. Um, no offense to any of y'all. Cody, how's it going? But if you're gonna, I guess you got to figure out what you're gonna do. Crops, beef cattle. That's an excellent um, enterprise to get into for the most part. Goats, sheep. Um, if you really want to get into dairy, all I'm going to say is good luck. Um, that's probably one of the hardest things to get into, in my opinion. Um, as for beef cattle, I mean, if you get on a property with, let's just say 5 acres or 10 acres or something like that, um, you got to figure out how many you want to handle. Um, there are ways of um, raising large amounts of cattle on a small amount of property. And you need to be smart about it. Um, One guy, I'm gonna give him a shout out as long as I do. Um, his YouTube is, I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation, but Viser Cattle Company. It's Veeser Cattle Co. I believe it is. Um, and he does a really really nice job. He's kind of a For anybody that wants to get into a beef operation, he's kind of an inspiration, honestly. He's working. He used to work full time, and now he's coming back to the farm. He's going to take over, or he kind of already, took over the farm, and he geared it towards beef cattle. I think he's running like 100 head now, and he's looking at different crops and feeds and forages and stuff, and what he can make do with the little bit of land that he has. He has me highly convinced that sorghum Sudan grass is, for a large cattle operation on small acreage, it's the best crop you can uh, pursue. Um, you can get 2 cuts out of it, and the stuff will grow. I mean, he's cutting the stuff that's 7, 8 foot tall and getting hundreds of bales, and obviously, wrapping them then. But, um, so you gotta look into that, how you can manage, your beef herd on a small property. The other thing is, you get yourself located, and then you keep your eyes open. Craigslist, Facebook, um, try and pick up some more land. Usually there's some for rent. Um, Sometimes you got to drive, you know, half an hour. You gotta find it, and like I said before, treat the land like your own. Keep it cleaned up and whatnot. Um, but you know, and obviously, if you're gonna try and do this, um, don't try and get huge um, until you get yourself settled in. Um, keep your job. If you have a good job, keep it. You're probably gonna burn yourself out, but if you're a young guy, you should be all right. And honestly, beef cattle aren't um, the hardest thing in the world. They're not too time consuming if you're set up right. And you'll have, you know, hopefully your weekends or, you know, vacation or whatever. Um, if you're looking to start farming full time, you gotta kind of work into it. Um, if you find a decent sized, you know, farm with 100 acres, and you're going to pursue uh, the beef cattle, you know, I would still probably consider having a part-time job. It's tough to say, but money's tight. And you don't realize it, and you're going to think you're bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you send out hundreds of thousands of dollars back out the door because your expenses are right up there with you. Um, but it's possible. You gotta have a plan. Um, and I kind of said before, dairy. If you really want to start a dairy farm, all I'm gonna say is good luck. Um, Especially here for anybody here in Wisconsin. Good luck. Um, I don't know how it is, around the world. I think Canada kind of has a system set up with you kind of buy into a quota, or I don't. Obviously we haven't done dairy in over 10 years now. Um, but there I've kind of, you got to know what you're doing there too. Um, if you're coming from no dairy, no dairy background, and you've never really done much on a dairy farm, you got to know what you're doing. And yeah, the dairy farms are hard to come by around here. Um, it's it's starting to be, um, you gotta. I don't want to say you got to get big, but you got to have a. This is really hard to explain. It's um, to be honest, you're better off probably staying away from the dairy. Now, if you have an in, you have your parents, your grandparents, um, a relative. Uh, Maybe there's an older guy up the road that doesn't have anybody to pass the farm down to. That's the kind of thing, you need to maybe move in there and say, hey, I can, work for you, or um, especially maybe them smaller operations. Um, you got to work into it, and maybe you can kind of work in and take it over, kind of thing, or kind of do things on um, halves and stuff like that. Um, but like I said before, you got to know what you're doing, because you know you do one little thing wrong and your milk production falls, or um, you know stuff like that. You got to have the cows need to get bred when they need to get bred. They need to get um, milked on a schedule. Unfortunately, your schedule's going to be, you know, 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 at night, and there's a little bit of play there, but for the most part, you got to be um, right in that range. I know I think there's one guy that milks at 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night. Um, he's still going, so I guess it's still working. Um, but that's the other thing too, is if you're starting out, don't try to be huge. Um, I mean, with the dairy now, the term huge is kind of a toss up in the air, because the range of farm size is so great now. I mean, uh, one of my best friends, I think they milk about 50. And the reason they're still going is because they're using the same equipment, everything's paid for, and I mean, they've been doing it since, beginning of time there, and, they know what they're doing. And, they're not mixing like a TMR. They don't have that mixer and that setup and that this and that. And, in a way, they don't have that expense. So, if their milk production isn't top in the air, they still don't have that expense. That's kind of another thing with crops and all that. People are going to no-till and stuff like that, and their bushel per acre might come down a little bit, but they don't have the expense of running the tillage across the field. And that's something you need to take into consideration on your pen and your notepad, when you're figuring numbers and stuff like that. Yeah, 1,300 head is a. I know I worked for a guy that was milking, I think 900, and they were milking 3 times a day, and I think they maybe had an hour or two in between milkings that uh, they could clean everything up and whatnot. Yeah, and efficiency. Yep. Um, efficiency can mean money. um, if you can get everything done in a timely manner, and um, not waste fuel, not waste energy, in a way, all that stuff is gonna come back, um, in the end. Um, you know, beef, the dairy is gonna be tough. Beef is, I want to say, one of the easiest. You're gonna have the input costs, but um, I mean, for the most part, they'll be happy with a bale of hay. Hay, mineral. They're fed, they're happy, and that's how it is. Um, as far, as crops and, obviously if you pick up some ground, you're going to have potentially some hay or some corn or something like that. That's where custom operators come in pretty handy. I mean, yeah, you could buy a little square baler and, you know, put up your hay that way. There's plenty of people that do, but you might also be working, you know, you- sometimes the um the outside income is gonna be what keeps you afloat, um, and pays the bills sometimes. But you gotta sometimes it doesn't pay to buy the equipment, and um, you know, for the most part, I feel because I do a lot of smaller jobs with my custom baling. There's a few smaller beef operations. The one guy, um, most of my people cut, rake, and then I just come in and bale. And they got everything handled. I just come in and bale. I got a couple smaller guys that um, I'll cut it for them, and then they have a rake, and then I come in and bale. I got one guy that he has the equipment, to cut, ted, rake, and then obviously I'll have the baler. But sometimes, because he is working a full time job, or I guess, part time, full time, that he'll have me come in and do it for him anyways, just so he get it done. And, sometimes, uh, especially the last couple years, the weather is kind of unforgiving, and you got to hit your window when you hit your window. Um, yeah, it's kind of hit me. There's a lot of people that ask, how to start, and it's not easy. It really, especially, um, getting a loan for the property and finding a property in general. You might have to relocate. Um, it's not always going to pop up, just down the road, and land isn't hard to get either, or it isn't easy to get. It's actually really hard to get, um, especially when you got three big grain operations right around you. And I mean, for right where we are, um, I don't understand anybody running over 1,000 acres. I mean, it's um, for the way our area is set up, it's so divided, and I mean, you rarely see, um, let's say a 300-acre field. There's You'll hardly ever find one of those around here. What you're gonna get is you're gonna get a 60, a 40, maybe 100. There's a few of them, 150, maybe a 200 spots. But the problem is when you're running thousands and thousands of acres, you're constantly moving and you're constantly pulling into a field, say, digging up 40 acres, moving down the road, doing another 40 acres, and you're wasting a lot of time moving around. Whereas, like, Montana, um, or even in the Midwest and spots, and you get in those fields and go 2 miles one way. mean, you can get a lot of acres covered in a hurry when you're not, um, constantly turning around and all that. And then it's easier to do 1,000 acres because sometimes your fields might be 400 or 500 acres, and you're there, you're getting a job done, and you know. But the other thing, if you want to move in and be a grain operation, you want to grow crops, corn, soybeans, wheat. Um, figure out what you can handle. It's not going to be easy because you're either going to have to rent the land or buy the land. If you rent it, it can be pulled off from under your feet at any moment. So you got to keep the land, like I said before, you got to keep the landowner happy. You got to pay the rent on time. You got to get the equipment, which is going to kill you because it's expensive. Um, if you're running a large amount of acres, you're going to need help. So, you know, you're either going to have to get a family member in with you or you're going to have to hire people. And people are hard to find. um, and there's uh, there's actually a large dairy up the road that is closed down now. The bank is actually owning it because he got too big, and he got too big. He wasn't managing it, and eventually, the bank came in and pulled it out from under him. Basically, and now the bank's running it. The bank can't sell it because it's they want way up here, but nobody can afford to pay up here because milk ain't worth anything. And you know, if he would have stuck with, I don't know what he had up there at the end, like 3,000 cows or something like that. But if he would have stuck with a smaller number of cows and did a better job, he'd be doing pretty good right now. So big isn't always better. And I have nothing against big farms. I think, um, some people say, big farms are ruining agriculture and the small family farms are going out. And I don't agree with that hardly at all. Um, there are a lot of big farms that are family farms. And the only reason they're big farms is because they saw an opportunity and they took it. And, and that's kind of how it is. But there is also farms out there that the guy's just adding more and more land just to be the biggest and the best. And that's kind of how the dairy was. He wanted to be the biggest. And, when you have that kind of mentality, that's when stuff heads south. The bank moves in and says, "All right, you're done," and and then you're back where you started. But as far as goat, if you just want to pick up a farm and um, have some animals and just have the farm life without being full time farmer, goats, sheep, um, you know, you can make money with goats. Don't expect to be full time goat farming unless you really get into it. And then, even then, it's kind of that you get too big and it gets out of control kind of thing. Sheep, I don't know much about sheep. Um, Kind of with the goats, it goes kind of in streaks. Um, But if you just want the farm life without having to worry about money, you got your couple animals, you're working full time, and you're coming home and you're feeding your animals, and all is good and everybody's happy. And I strongly believe that for like raising a family and stuff, that is the best thing you can do. Um, I'm very thankful that I am on the farm and I grew up on the farm, and it's just you get a whole different perspective on life, I guess. I have a lot of friends and other people that didn't grow up on the farm, and they don't have that type of thinking sometimes. And that unfortunately there's people out there that don't appreciate what happens on a farm, and they don't realize that they should be appreciating it because they eat 3 times a day. But oh, talking too much. Ugh. Um, but yeah, I think just having the um, I don't want to say adventures, but growing up on a farm, I think it, people like to see that too. Businesses, employers, stuff like that. Um, for one thing, you're probably going to have more work ethic than anybody else, and that's a good thing. Just by saying, you grew up on a small farm and whatnot, and you're going to take those lessons with you too, wherever you go. Um, but you know, so yeah, I think starting a farm. I guess if I were to let's put this in a scenario now. If I were to say start completely over, well, I couldn't really start completely over. Well, let's just say I found myself off the farm with nothing. Um, let's just say I had a bunch of money, and let's say I find a nice, we'll say it's an old dairy operation or something like that with maybe, we'll just say 100 acres. I would probably definitely pursue the beef cattle. Um, with the knowledge that I have now, probably, 100 acres. I don't know if I'd get away with 100 head or something like that. Um, but, you know, 100 head, say I pick up some land down the road. Um, so, like I said before, Viser, I think it's Viser Cattle Company. That's how they pronounce it. Um, he has me highly convinced that sorghum Sudan grass is the king for raising beef cattle. And might be some people out there that disagree with me. I don't know, but um, you can plant a small piece of that and get a lot. I don't know what he was getting. I mean, he was. I'll just say like 20 acres. I mean, he had like 300 bales off one cutting, and you wrap them, and it's low quality feed, but um, you get a lot, and you're raising beef cattle. Um, so sorghum, Sudan grass, corn stalks, fall round baled corn stalks. Get them as dry as you can. One thing I also like to try is wrapping some maybe some higher moisture corn stalks. We'll see. Um, but round baled, dry as can be fall corn stalks, and they'll actually eat a fair amount. Um, that's another thing he's working on is trying to find the extra feed and whatnot. So the fall made corn stalks. Um, if anybody doesn't know, I do DNR properties. So like it's like a CRP. It's a conservation set aside. I don't really know how to explain it. The government owns it, but they have me come in, cut it, bale it. Just clean the property, um, try and keep the saplings and the brush and stuff down, and clean up the property. And if I were to start over with the knowledge I have now, I would definitely be pursuing that, doing 100 acres of that stuff. Um, Obviously, I'd be a little bit more picky and choosy than I am now, finding some of the better properties with the better grass on it. But doing that, it's a lower quality marsh grass in a way. Doing that, the corn stalks, the sorghum Sudan, um, corn silage is definitely good for that as well. Um, and just kind of work it all into your operation. Um, and as far as expenses, well, you'll have the seed, the rent if you're not already putting it on uh, the land that you own, um, potentially the baling and stuff like that if uh, you don't have that stuff. Which in a way it's going to be cheaper. If you're a smaller operation, it's probably going to be cheaper just to have someone come in and do it, or you got to buy used equipment and get it back to par. And the problem with that is if it breaks down, you're just calling the custom guy anyways. Um, or if you have a good neighbor, you gotta be friends with your neighbors too. They can always come in and help you out from time to time. But the seed, possibly the rent, if you have additional land, um, the baling, whether custom or you're paying for the baler, you got that. Um, the other thing is if you don't have a cornfield, if you don't have corn stalks available, go to that neighbor, go to the crop guy down the road, offer him, you know, so much a bale or so much an acre to bale his cornfield. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm not going to discuss any of what I pay. Basically the figure is that you're paying enough to replace what you're taking off is in fertilizer, and you know go down the road, corn stalks, bean straw for bedding. Or the other thing is a guy that just down the road. So there's a lot of canning crops around here, like peas, field peas. Um, it's kind of the big one, or wheat. If there's a farm with wheat around, kind of try and buddy up with them, see what their plans are once that crop comes off. Because peas are coming off. Let's see, probably about July. Yeah, I think about July they usually come out on a normal year. They were delayed quite a bit this year, but get in there. Well, for one, with the peas, there's pea vines, and if you get in there, buddy up with the farmer and say, hey, I'll give you so much for those pea vines. That's and or you offer to do something in return for them. Say you're going to haul all your manure on there, so, whatever. You know, there's a lot of bartering going on around here as well. Um, but pea vines, and then you get yourself some peas and oats or something like that. You can sow it right in, right behind, and by early fall, mid fall, you'll have another crop. Especially in wheat, we do that in wheat quite a bit. I've done it the last 2 years. I've been wrapping. I get peas and barley. We take the wheat off. Obviously, we're baling the straw, and then we're putting in the barley and the peas, and it comes. I think usually about October. I think it's usually about October. We're in there and cutting and baling, and that makes some of the best feed. That either peas and barley or peas and oats. That is some of the best feed you can get. Um, I've never had much experience with pea vines. I've wrapped some before. I can't say that. I've baled pea vines dry actually. I actually did a lot this year, more than I was planning on. I did a lot of dry pea vine, and it takes a lot of work to get pea vines dry. But that's where a tedder comes in handy. You're gonna have to ted those things like 3, 4 times just to get them dry. Um, but I did a lot of that, and then you can stack them in your shed or whatever. I don't know. I hear that the cattle eat them, dry. They're kind of, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's kind of like a hay. I don't know. It. I don't have much experience. We haven't done peas on the farm, and oh man, I couldn't even tell you. I don't even know if we did peas. We quit milking in '09. I don't think we did peas before. I don't know. I don't even know. Barron's Homestead. Hello. If anybody has any questions, throw them out there. I'm about ready to hang this up. My girlfriend, if she's not watching, is probably irritated with me, unless she's watching. Um, but yeah, you know, there's other ways, and there's a. He's actually, I think he does dairy. He milks cows. He doesn't own hardly any property, but he works with all these guys. He'll be chopping pea vines over here, and then he'll be sowing in. I think he does a lot of triticale and triticale and peas or something like that, and he'll be sewing that in, and then he'll be going over here and um, you know so and so took his weed off or whatever, and then he's sewing in something else, and most of his feed is coming from that, and obviously doing something like that, you're offering to put a cover crop on that guy's land, and you're keeping the weeds down basically, and you're utilizing that land. And um, and I don't know how the guys work it out. If I'm sure there's some sort of money exchange there, um, but you know that's a good way to say pick up land without actually picking up land. And as far as doing corn stalks or bean straw, or um, if you can, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but if you're in Wisconsin and you can find a guy to sell you some wheat straw cheap off the field, you should bail it. Wheat straw is expensive up here, and I've been trying for the last 2 years to get my hands on a field of wheat straw, and you know, bale it, bale it to resell. I pretty everything I do besides what we need for our cattle is baled for resale, and I I'm yet to find a field of wheat straw that's affordable, because these guys get excited because bales of wheat straw are selling for 65, $70 a bale, and they have a 80-acre field of wheat, and they think that their wheat straw is gold, but it's laying in a row. It's like, yeah, okay, it's worth money, but you got to bale it, and that also takes money. And you know, so it's difficult. The other thing is, corn stalks, if you can get in and you have a small cattle operation, you need some bedding or some corn stalks for feed or whatever you're planning to do, and you get this large acre field. Well, you're not going to probably need all of it. Well, by springtime, corn stalks will bring decent money. Obviously not as good as your hay or um, your wheat straw, or whatever, but it's a good way to pay some bills, in a way. Um, I don't know I don't know what they've been going. A lot of parts around the world sell everything by the ton, which I kind of agree with. Um, I like selling stuff by the bale. It's kind of a mixed feelings. A lot of guys, um, as a producer standpoint, selling by the bale is probably better off, in my opinion. As a purchaser standpoint, buying by the ton, you know what you're getting, especially if you're gonna mix. Let's say you're mixing TMR and stuff like that, to know how much material you have in that bale and how far it'll go. Yeah, it's kind of a coin flip, honestly. You're gonna sell it. I'm the auction that I mainly go to. Everything is by the bale, and for the most part, I think it works pretty good. And the buyers aren't stupid either. I mean, they're up in those bales. They're feeling how packed they are, how tight they are, and you know they can usually figure out how heavy the bale is, or how much is in the bale, and how far the bale is going to go, and stuff like that. Um, but so recap. I need to shut this off. But if you're looking to get into farming, all I'm going to say is good luck. um, it's definitely hard, especially dairy farming. If you're just going to get in on the side and raise a few cattle, raise a few goats, chickens, whatever. Forgot about the chickens. I don't think there's much money in chickens anymore, anyways. I feel like that kind of fell out of the sky. Um, or making hay. That's fairly easy. Can't really go wrong there. Gotta get your hay dry and that's about it. But I guess you gotta get off the field too. But thanks for watching. I got 4 of you. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the comments or the chat. Um, if you're watching and haven't subscribed yet, you should subscribe. I'd appreciate it. I'm struggling. I'm stuck at 69. I haven't moved and like I've gained subscribers, but I'm still at 69, so I don't understand it. um, we'll be I got a steer feeding video coming up. We're gonna be doing that probably next week. Um, more equipment. We got to get ready for the spring. Hopefully it comes sooner than later. Um, might be hauling some bales. We got to get our inventory pretty well moved out. Um, got more goats due. I got 2 more goats due. I don't know if I talked about the last one. I had a set of twins 2 days ago, 3 days ago. So I got 2 more in this group, and then I think I got 8 or 9 for the next group, which would be April. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up button. I got 0 likes. Don't forget to tell your friends about me too. I need help. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time.